Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Wealth and Wellness Report podcast. I am your host, Diego. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. I know I did. I had an awesome time with my son. Caddied for him, golf tournament in Hollister, and that was an absolute blast. Today we're going to be talking about this uncomfortable truth of scaling up your business and, the good, bad, and the ugly, these horror stories that come along with being an entrepreneur. Let's get into it, because I think all of us everybody wants to scale. It sounds sexy, right? More deals, more money, more freedom. But let me hit you with the uncomfortable. Scaling up is not sexy. It's fucking painful. Most entrepreneurs I know, and I was guilty of this too, think they're scaling when really they're just working harder. That's not scaling. That's burnout with a prettier name. I think scaling means building something new that can grow without you. And trust me, that's a transition. It hurts. When you think about having mouths to feed and people depending on you and you showing up on a daily basis, that's scary. You got to think long term. And you have to fire yourself from the jobs you're comfortable with. So this is what Dan says, Dan Martell, which I follow frequently, and I'm sure you guys know Dan. Dan is the man. Your greatest strength is your Achilles heel as you scale, as you grow. So the more you're willing to hand off things that you're really good at, the better as time goes on. And if you don't, the very things that you built are going to ultimately choke you. They're going to strangle you and you're going to suffocate. And I've lived it. And so in today's episode, I'm going to break down what scaling actually looks like. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Because if you're serious about wealth, freedom, and legacy, you have to go through this. It's a big shift and it's a mindset thing. You have to say okay with letting go of things that you have ultimate control of and that you're really good at. So let's get into it. Here's the truth about scaling that nobody wants to say out loud. And here's my myth. This is what I think. When people hear the word scale, I think immediately think about growth. Bigger business, more deals, more employees, more properties, more revenue, more. And yeah, that's a part of it. But here's the thing. Growth and scaling are not the same thing. Growth just means doing more. Scaling means doing more with less effort from you. So one example for me was growing and scaling my construction company early on, having to wear the bags, having to swing the hammer, having to build the thing, having to administer the thing, having to come home and deal with the books and the accounting and all of the administrative side of doing a project. Now, I finally gave that up and started working with people who knew how to swing the hammer better than me, who knew how to implement the project better than me, who got into the construction project and environment and knew the flow from start to finish. By relinquishing responsibility and power to my construction professionals who were able to go in there and perform at a higher level than me, I was able then to focus on other aspects of the business. For me particularly, it was marketing and sales. How to get more leads in the door and how to close more leads. That's a very simple story. And, there was a lot of ups and downs there. And working with a revolving door of staff is always challenging, but you rise and fall to the levels of your systems. So as long as there's a baseline expectation, and I want to shout out to our friends and partners at NorCal Remodeling Group, aka True North Kitchen and Bath, we inspect what we expect. So following up with all of our teams and reiterating and re-emphasizing the system and the process and this accountability that we all have as a team, we only dial in that much better or that much more. We only create that much more cohesion and production and camaraderie throughout the day to day. And it compounds. There's a compounding effect here where the more work you do individually, collectively, and cohesively as a team, the greater the production level. So, Circle Food projects over the last 15 years have been a great example of this. How we've been able to take on projects of a large size and do it through growing a team. And so that's not scaling. That's just hustling harder if you are on the other side of things. Scaling is when the business starts running without you. And when these systems, people, and processes take over the things that used to eat up your time. So scaling means you could step away for a week or a month and the business doesn't just survive, it thrives. That's the difference here. So if you're away on vacation and there's revenue occurring in your business and you're ultimately not needed, that's when you know you've scaled. But here's the myth. Everywhere you go on social media, everybody makes scaling look super glamorous. You see the highlight reels, you guys, the cars, the vacations, the freedom. What you don't see are the nights staring at the spreadsheets, wondering how you're going to make payroll, or that gut-wrenching feeling of letting someone go because they're not a fit, or the doubt that creeps in when your business feels like it's outgrowing you. You can't make any money by yourself. In business, it's a team game. It's a team environment. So there is going to be a revolving door or a fallout of people that you work with. It's just normal. Either it's a personality issue or they don't produce or whatever. But as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you have to have these really tough conversations. You really need to get into these trenches with your team and hash out all of the things. It's like a marriage, you guys. Like if you are in a team environment, whether it's a baseball team or a soccer team, or you guys are on a marketing team or a construction team, it's all the same. Communication is key. Cohesion is key. Anticipation is key. Being aggressive is key. All of these things that we get taught through athletics in particular is what is going to help you grow your business and ultimately your mindset. So my special moment in business, or these special moments I have in business, is when I'm able to highlight a victory, not only as an entrepreneur, but as a teammate, where my teams are working together with me closely and we make beautiful music. We hit every expectation from the client or the customer right on the head. We go above and beyond. And when we get a 5-star review, or we get a tip in revenue, or we, just get a really good vibe, or even stepping back and seeing, the fruits of our labor, that is such a wonderful, wonderful feeling to experience. And on the flip side, there is a pain of letting go. The hardest part about scaling is not so much the strategy. It's not even the money. It's the emotional side of things. Letting go of the control you've held since day one is super challenging, especially if you started this business from an emotional perspective or an emotional place. I started a company at the birth of my son, and it was like a second child for me. So of course I'm going to protect it and nurture it and love it like my own child. And I'm going to be very, very, very careful with who gets to work with the business, in the business. And that is hard to let go of. And I am absolutely guilty of holding on too tightly at times because I am afraid of what could happen to my business if I give the responsibility of running the ship to another person. So when you start, you wear every hat. You're the salesperson, you're the bookkeeper, you're the project manager, you're the marketer, you're the customer service rep. And for a while, that works. But when you try to scale, these hats, they all get super heavy and you can't hold them all at the same time. That's when you begin to hire. That's when you begin to learn how to bring folks into your team, vet them, verify that they do a good job. So this whole human resources department to your business begins to grow. And that is a very important place to scale your systems and your process. Scaling means letting go before you're ready. It means hiring someone who can do 70% of what you can do today, knowing that with some training and some time, they'll get to 90%. And that extra 20% of imperfection, it's worth it because it frees you to do things only you can do. But there's a catch in all of this. Letting go doesn't always feel good. It feels like chaos most of the time. And you'll want to jump back in. You'll want to micromanage, but you have to resist that urge because the only way to step into a bigger role is to release the smaller ones. So read Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time, because in that book, you'll learn what he calls the replacement ladder. And the very first rung of the replacement ladder is administrative. All of these smaller tasks that you shouldn't be doing, even if you're really, really good at it. For example, bookkeeping, consolidating all of these receipts that come in from, the expenses that you've made for the business, taking those receipts and putting them into your chart of accounts in your, bookkeeping software. All of that, you don't need to be doing that on a Sunday morning. You don't need to be doing that on a weekend while you're trying to catch up with all of the other things in your life, whether it's your business, your family, your hobbies, your side hustles. That is one perfect example of what you should not be doing in the long term. Of course, when you start, you gotta wear all the hats, but that's a really great administrative task on the replacement rung of the replacement ladder, that first rung, getting that off of your table. Another really great example of that administrative rung, replacing some tasks there, is your calendar. Who's booking your appointments? Who's the one who's taking care of the communication between those that you do book? That's another really good example of hiring somebody else to do the smaller tasks so that you can focus on the higher earning activities of your business. Now, once you get up to that second rung, third rung, fourth rung of the ladder, as you read that book, you'll learn very clearly where your uniqueness resides, where you ultimately are best. The most amount of your time needs to be in your business. And I think that's the CEO shift, right? Let's talk about the shift of the move from hustler to CEO. This is where most entrepreneurs either break through or they break down. And going back to systems, money systems, your bookkeeping softwares, your accounting, if you're in construction, your construction operations software, and how taxes and reserves and all of the extra capital or working capital that you have, make sure you got that on point. The other one's people systems. Maybe For if you're a contractor, that's an onboarding process. It might feel tedious, but at some point, freeing that up is going to be huge. Deal systems, your current deal flow and how that's managed and who's communicating what to whom. That is a really important system to have. And if you're in real estate, to have a CRM is everything, because in real estate, it's a relationship-based game. So here's the question I have for everybody. Are you guys hustling, or are you just operating? Are you stepping into that CEO seat? Because the truth is, scaling isn't about being busier. It's about elevating the game. And the sooner you make that shift, the sooner you unlock the freedom you've been chasing. So there's an ugly side of scaling. And I talked about that a little bit earlier on, and I want to be real with you guys. Scaling has an ugly side. And if you don't talk about it, if I don't talk about it, I'd be lying to you. So first is cash flow stress. Scaling eats up cash. And that's the scary thing. When you need to put together another job title and position on a particular pillar of a particular department that's going to get you an X amount more revenue per year, to shell that out in terms of working capital is really hard, especially for those who are risk adverse. You're sitting on a nest egg and you've got a cushion and a pillow. However, comfortability is not going to get you to those numbers that you ultimately want to make. So in order to get there, you do have to send out some working capital. You do have to push yourself a little further down the comfort zone. And being transparent about what pushes you and builds and what pushes you and how that builds trust with everybody on your team. It's everything. So if you have a big payroll, you have a big load of stress on your shoulders. I mean, you have to be obsessed with what you do on a daily basis in order for you to really get through the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, and that's okay. Secondly is hiring. Hiring the wrong people is, I think, what we all are ultimately going to experience. And I've had my fair share of experiences hiring the wrong people. I've hired people who have been amazing, long lasting, super valuable, wonderful human beings that I felt were amazing teammates. On the other hand, I've hired knuckleheads, people who show up late, who want more money and want to work less, who have taken our tools and equipment and vehicles to do other jobs, who've stolen from me. It happens. And you have to have the fortitude and the mindset to keep going, because if you're not obsessed with your ultimate goal and what you want to accomplish with your business, then when these things happen, you will fold your cards. You will quit. So I'm not going to name names here, and I'm not going to mention a particular bad hire, but it is a red flag that I want to raise for all of you who are trying to scale your businesses. You can't ignore it. You have to prepare it. And remember, you rise and fall to the levels of your systems. Inspect with what you expect from everybody on your teams. And that doesn't mean you have to micromanage, but there is a standard quality that you want to, a quality standard that you want to keep throughout all departments of your company. Now, another one I want to talk about is the shiny object syndrome. Whether you might be tempted to chase another business vertical, or maybe there's a side deal that you're really excited about, but then, you realize it would be a complete distraction from your core mission. Stay steadfast and keep going. Don't stop. Now, when you revolve into that next iteration of your business, you will know. The numbers will tell you. The spreadsheets and your conversion rates and all of what you're measuring is going to dictate when you're going to be ready to pull the trigger. Now, sometimes you have to anticipate and you have to pull the trigger on certain decisions a little sooner. And that's where risk is very, very, very involved in that process. But you can't manage what you don't measure. And if you don't measure your business, all the numbers, all the metrics, all the things that are really important, your cost of acquisition for a customer, your profit, your loss, your expenses, your overhead. If you're not measuring those, then you're not going to be informed to make a decision. So we do this on a quarterly basis. We go from week to week, from month to month, from quarter to quarter, from year to year. And that allows us to be in tune, lockstep with every aspect of the business. So going into this last bit, there's an emotional toll here. And it's your business, it's your livelihood, it's what you've put your blood, sweat, and tears in. So of course, there's going to be some emotions involved. Scaling is going to impact your personal life. It's going to impact your relationships and your health or your family time. It's going to be hard. And what sort of boundaries or habits are you putting into play to protect yourself when you're scaling? Health is wealth. And if you don't have the proper health regimen, if you're not taking care of your body and your mind and your spirit, and you're not integrating a holistic regimen of self-care, you will ultimately burn out, everybody. So important to stay strong mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually as an entrepreneur, because you will be kicked in the shorts. You will be hurt, and it's going to hit you on all of those levels. So like going to the gym, you go to the gym and you lift and you grow those muscles, and you can't do that until you absolutely destroy them. So it sounds counterintuitive, but you have to expend that energy to get the energy back. It's so important that you take care of that. So on this show, I really wanted to talk about scaling and how, unsexy it is. Everybody, you go online and you're like, yo, that guy's got a jet and he's just got a new yacht. And look at me, I just did this and I just did that. But they don't show you behind the scenes and all of the blood and all of the sweat and all of the tears that they've had to go through to get to where they are. It just doesn't happen overnight, unless you're shelling a whole bunch of money at like some gambling project, like some meme coin in the crypto space, and you score big. Like, to grow a business from the ground up is so hard. It takes a certain somebody to get in there, to do the work on a consistent basis, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. It takes years, you guys. So here's my final thought. Scaling isn't about doing more. It's about building something that outlives you. I've got a 500-year plan. I ultimately want what I do in the construction real estate space to become cultural practice, where health and wealth are integrated within the built environment, where regenerative agriculture, permaculture, and healthy living are interwoven into our community dynamics, and how everybody votes with their dollars to go out and improve their space and place. Not only that, but to reconnect yourself to those spaces and those places. It takes time, it takes energy, and it takes effort. So it may take you 5-10 years to get to a place where you feel good. And you might feel like you're starting late. And you might feel like you don't have enough time. But the only time is now. And to take a step and to move in that direction and staying consistent with those actions are going to compound, and you will win. It's just a matter of when. For me, I do this because of family. I do this because I want to see my kids one day benefit and their kids benefit So if you're listening right now, I want you to do something for me. I want you to write down one task you need to fire yourself from this week, just one, and commit to finding someone else or some system to handle it. That's your next step towards scaling. Everybody, I want to thank you again for listening to my show, The Wealth and Wellness Report. And if this episode hit home with you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment, share your biggest scaling struggle, and let's build this community together, because the more we share the truth, the more we all win. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Subscribe if you haven't already. I really would love to get some more subscribers. Really would love to share stories with you guys. So please share this freely to anybody who needs to hear it. And I'll see you guys on the next one.